welcome. If you're joining us live, thank you for being with us live. If you're watching the replay, thanks for that too. My name is Marcy Bro, and I'm here on Women Lead TV with my guest, Dr. Sherry Price. And you are watching the show that I like to call Unleashing Your Brand Brilliance. So this is a show where I love to talk with women entrepreneurs about their brand and their journey, because we all have stories and we all have a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. What you see in the front of the house is just maybe 10% of what happens behind the scenes. So I like to dig into the behind the scenes, and that's what we're going to do today. So Sherry, I would love to welcome you to the show. Will you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Marcy. I appreciate you offering to have me on your show. I'm a pharmacist, trained as a pharmacist, and after 20 years of doing that amazing work, I took a major pivot, and now I work as a life coach, helping women transform their relationship around alcohol, food, and their bodies.
Wonderful. And as I've been getting to know you throughout our time being friends and then have working together, I'm really seeing this evolution. So I'm excited to dig into that a little bit. But before we do that, you are a pharmacist by training. That was your first career. Then you did something else. I know you had a business outside of the classic pharmacy world, like we might know it, and then coaching. So can you describe to us the journey in your head of wanting to leave what I would imagine would seem like a safe and stable career to then start your own business? What was that like? And can you describe just a little bit about what that business was, just so we have some context?
Yes. So I worked as a pharmacist, trained in the hospital setting, worked in the hospital setting for a long time, did a bit of a stint in the pharmaceutical industry, and really loved teaching. And one of my core values is health. So willing to help others learn how to take better care of their health. So in my business as a pharmacist, I taught students on how to make the information digestible so they could pass the board exam, and then help consumers get the most use and best use from their medicines. So that was very rewarding. And then I felt this calling that pills are part of the story. They're not the entire story. And I know we live in a culture that really wants to just take a pill and then, all the symptoms go away. And yes, some of the symptoms will be managed through pills, but I believe in a bigger picture than that is more about lifestyle and our habits. So really looking at our lifestyle as medicine, and that's where I pivoted away from pharmacy world into life coaching world, because I really want people to feel empowered with their health, and not at just waiting for the diagnosis before really stepping into that power and taking care of their bodies in a way that promotes longevity, flexibility, agility, all those things that we want in our golden years, that we don't just turn into chronic disease states. And taking those measures earlier is going to set us up for having that vitality that we want later in life. So that was like the evolution of really understanding, like, yes, pills are important and they have a role, but let's talk about the bigger picture. And what are we eating? How are we moving? What are we doing on a more of a daily or weekly basis? And these habits, these core habits that we want in our life, so we get the life that we really, really desire.
And I feel like you're such the perfect messenger to deliver this message, because you do come from such a classically trained background, and you come with this doctor label, and you have really seen behind the scenes in the pharmacy world and in the hospital setting. And I can imagine that, little by little, you must have just been really seeing like, oh, there's just such a bigger picture that I want to address. And I think a lot of women that are watching this show are in the position that you and I are in, where we started our career doing one thing, and then we really evolved and been able to kind of define a role for us that is just giving more than we were in our kind of like little narrow box, if you will. And that's what I really see for you. And so can you describe how do you help? Most you work with women pretty much exclusively. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how do you help Are you meeting with them face to face? Are you meeting online? Like, what does that look like when you're working with women that opt in to say yes to working with you?
Yeah, so all of my work is done remotely here on Zoom and meeting through, I like to call it telehealth over the computer. And where I focus is really seeing like what is bothering or triggering you, what's not working or what do you want to improve in your life, and taking steps towards mitigating that and eliminating that, or getting what you actually desire, right? So taking out the bad, putting in the good. So I do personal one-on-one coaching. I have group coaching. I have programs that launch periodically throughout the year, depending on what the woman wants to focus in on. Sometimes it's hormones, sometimes it's drinking, sometimes it's like, oh, the holidays are coming and I don't want to fall into this, oh my gosh, this slide into my next 5 or 10 pounds. And then come January, I'm going to want to take that off. So, how can I look at my life and set up my life so that I'm successful and I'm not yo-yoing between these places of under consuming and over consuming and under consuming and over, like, it's almost like this constant battle women have around, food or alcohol or get-togethers. And so how to manage that so it's not such a yo-yo ping pong effect, because that actually has more harm on our bodies than I think many of us believe. A lot of times when we yo-yo up, it's almost impossible for the body to come back down to its other state before the yo-yo went into effect, just because of all the hormones that the cascades that are sent off. Then sometimes there's a reluctance, or there's never the right timing. I know a lot of women are busy, they're professionals, they're running busy lives, they have family, they have their extended elders to take care of as well. And so time becomes an issue. And so that yo-yoing really can not set us up for a healthy lifestyle that we want to be having. And we oftentimes as women will put ourselves last. And so really coming at it away from like a compassionate way, like how can we take care of ourselves and still take care of others? And we are just as important as other members within our family.
And also being able to, and you and I, a little behind the scenes, you and I just spent the weekend together at a business retreat. So we drove to Palm Springs and back. And so you and I had a lot of time to chat. And one of the things that I was so impressed by you is you're really modeling to your daughter, who's currently 13. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
You're modeling to her. We can tell teenagers all day long till we're blue in the face, tell them, but we know that telling does not land when you're dealing with teenagers. So, really it's important to model. And I know that you're trying to do that for your daughter, is really just model some things that she might pick up on. And that's really the best you could do, I think, as a mom of that age. So, you're also, you're working with women that are maybe your contemporaries, but you're also this beautiful example for your daughter, who might grow up with some healthier habits than maybe we did in our generation, because we just didn't know as much back when we were growing up. So I think that's a beautiful opportunity. And so how do you feel as a mom of a teenager? What is the best way to kind of either talk to or model these habits for women coming up behind us?
Yes. We just had a great conversation on the way to school today, just about this same topic, Marcy. Because I was gone out at this retreat, she was saying that she didn't make healthy choices. And so she was really kind of being hard on herself on the way to school today and saying, Mommy, I ate things I shouldn't have. I had the tiramisu that you had in the fridge for guests, and I dipped into one. And she was going through all the things and the poor choices she had made. And I just reassured her. And I said, it's not a perfect journey, and it's okay to have food that we feel might be indulgent or not the healthiest choices. But we just want to keep steering the needle towards like a more healthy balance. So we were talking about what percentage of time did she feel she had healthy choices that she made throughout the weekend versus what percentage of the time. And she says about 50-50. And I said, okay, honey, well, the next couple of days, we're going to strive for 70%, 80%. We're going to, just start going and making some healthier choices. We're honoring our body. We're learning about food. And so it's not about wagging our finger. I feel so many women get this love-hate relationship with substances. I'll just call them substances. It could be alcohol, it could be food. They're just substances that we consume, and we white knuckle and say, I got to do this and I got to follow it perfectly. And if I don't follow it perfectly, then comes that wagging finger, that inner dictator. And that just sets us up to make poorer choices. Not only that, it also makes us feel worse about ourselves. And so this is not about feeling worse about yourself. It's having compassion for yourself so that you can model that next choice in a more healthy way, or a way that sustains your body, in a way that makes your body feel good. And she even said, like, my stomach feels crampy this morning. It doesn't look as flat. It doesn't feel as good as it normally does. And so she's like, I could see how these choices are affecting my mood on a Monday morning. And so, yes. And I think tuning into our bodies is one of the greatest gifts because that's how we learn. We learn, what makes us feel low energy or not our best selves, or, a little bloated. And so doing that reflection and really tuning into your body is where you're going to get your best learning. It's not going to be from some guru out there. It's not going to be somebody selling you diet pills. It's not going to be the latest meal plan to follow. We all know how that works. That does not create sustainable change. Yes, it might be short-lived. Yes, you might get some effect for it for a week or two, but then you just lose interest. You lose just motivation. And I think when we rely too much on other people and too much on motivation, we just can't live in a constant state of motivation, and we can't just constantly be looking out to other people, because we are basically the knowledge body of our bodies. We are the ones that feel how food affects us, how alcohol affects us. And as women, my daughter going through puberty, myself going through perimenopause, our hormones are changing. So certain weeks we might have different cravings than other weeks, depending on our cycles. And so I think knowing that about yourself is a gift that you give yourself. And then how do you want to navigate those weeks? Right. So it's not just this one regimen that works a lot of times for men. And I think when a lot of women come to me, they're thinking, I'm going to just get one regimen and that's it. No, we're going to honor everything about your body. We're going to honor if it still has a cycle or it doesn't have a cycle. We're going to honor if you are day shift or night shift, so there's so many circadian rhythms. There's so many rhythms that a woman's body feels. And that if we honor that in the best way and really take care of the hormones that way, then we're going to feel better. And I want to say, like, more empowered, just more optimal, and move throughout the day with less criticism, because we're going to come at it from a compassionate standpoint.
And that really dovetails so beautifully into the next thing that I wanted to talk with you about. You have a podcast called The Drink Less Lifestyle, and you can find out a lot about that mentality on your website, which we will link in the show notes here. But, really, I just want to unpack that term, drink less lifestyle. What does that mean to you, and how are you offering this to women as opposed to maybe some other modalities which are all about not drinking?
Yes. And I love the play on words. That's why I selected it. Drink less can mean drinkless, right? So without a drink,
no, I didn't even pick that up, but yeah, you're right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I chose that particularly because I'm not sober and I don't have a desire to be there yet. But I'm not against people who want to just say, no alcohol for me. And I believe some people will need that route. But if you look at the stats, 90% of people who have excessive drinking actually don't fall into the category where they need to abstain forever, or that category that we no longer refer to as alcoholics, because that's, a name that's no longer utilized. But that's the old terminology a lot of us can resonate with, because that's what we grew up with. So a lot of people, when I had my over drinking habit, a lot of people would say, you just need to cut it. Go to AA, right? Those were the options that people knew about. And I'll even say in my training as a pharmacist, those were the only options that were taught to me and that I knew about. Now, when I had my own struggle and I was thinking about what would a healthy relationship with alcohol look like for me, right? Not for somebody else. I wasn't ready for the, all or nothing approach. So I just wanted to drink a lot less than what I was and not look at alcohol as like a demon or evil, or all of those terms would make me just want to rebel and drink more. So they weren't working for the way my brain is put together, my body is put together. So this system that I work with women through is really designed to saying, okay, what are you willing to do? Just tell me where you're at and where we want to go, and we'll go there. And then we can assess, is that too much or too little? Right? It's kind of like leaning in and learning from your body. Because as we age, we all know that we can't tolerate the same amount of alcohol as our 20-year-old self. We may have been able to do those ragers and those benders, but we know now, as we're in our 40s and 50s and later, like, it's not just a day you lose. You can lose a whole weekend if you go on a rager, right? We just process it differently. Our bodies can't handle it the same way. And that's okay. And that's okay. We just need to learn to pivot with it. And that doesn't mean no alcohol ever, if that's not what's desirable for you. It just means we need to like contain it, right? And so changing that desire for it, I work with on the mind, but also changing our relationship with it, and where we could be around others who drink. Because a lot of people think, oh, I have to change my friends. What will my friends think of me? I don't subscribe to any of that. I have the same friendships, and sometimes I drink with them and sometimes I don't. So it's finding what's going to work for you. And I think it's based on where you want to go and what are your goals. And so that's why I started the podcast, is because it's a different way of thinking about alcohol use. And there's, now that I'm in the field and I have been in the field for 5+ years, there's a lot of programs out there, not just AA, but there are some programs like the Smart Recovery Program, and it's not all about just pure abstinence. So there's a lot of research supporting that people can have a different relationship with alcohol. And I think we need to be shouting that from the rooftops, because we turn off people who are not ready to say cold turkey, never again.
Right. And that will just set you up for failure if you are, in a shame spiral and you're like, never again am I going to do this. And then, inevitably, if you might fall off the wagon, then you're going to just feel so lousy about yourself, whether it's drinking or overeating or indulging in that, whatever habit, over shopping. Like, there's so many ways that we self-soothe, and there's things that we fall back on. And I think what I really love about your perspective is that we need to be honest with ourselves and really address the root cause of why we are doing the over-ing. And that will, hopefully, in an ideal world, getting to the root cause and really addressing these issues and just being really honest with yourself is going to then, help address some of these, the symptoms of the problem. And I think that's just like the ultimate pharmacist. You're out there trying to, you don't want to over medicate someone. You really want to get to the root of why. And so I know that is a conversation I don't even have to ask, but can you just describe what is that conversation like? And everyone's different, I know, but when you're meeting with a client, can you take maybe an example of how you would talk to someone about getting to the root cause and addressing it? And that might be a big topic to talk about in this, soundbite world we're in, but, can you just give me a little glimpse into what that conversation looks like?
Yeah. So on working with somebody new on the intake, I'm listening to all the things that they want to change. And we go back to like, how long has it been going on? Is there a triggering event? For some women, it's a divorce, right? They really never had an alcohol crutch, but now they have one because they went through a divorce 10 years ago. And, the relationship is long gone. They're healed from the relationship, but they kept on hanging on to the alcohol. Or, it could be food is a big way moms show love to their children, right? They come home, they want a home cooked meal, or eat this, or can I offer you this? And they're offering second helpings and third helpings. And, societally, we don't question that. And we don't think it's bad. and I'm not saying it's bad. We just have to analyze like, okay, what are our stories that we have around food, and are we using that as a way to show love to someone else, like our kids? Like I'm very particular about making sure that that's not my like a huge form of love that I show my daughter. Like love comes from other things that I do for her, because I don't want her to have an over attachment to food. I want her to have a healthy, attachment with food. So it's really looking back towards what are their narratives and the things that they've picked up culturally or socially about these substances, about these things that they do that they want to rectify, that then they want to kind of say, okay, if this is what I've been learned or trained to think about food, like I always get dessert after dinner, right? Like that could be a common one for a lot of people. I don't want to be eating, or I'm snacking after dinner because we've been told 6 meals a day, or at least 6 times these small meals a day is what's going to get weight loss, but there's no data to support that at all. So it's like, oh, okay, we were fed misinformation back in the 70s and 80s in the SnackWells movement. So all of this misinformation may have not been due to things that they are even aware of. And so we just talk through it and just keep talking and getting to where that root cause is that's leading them to think, oh my gosh, this is why I keep overdoing it. And then we just rewind that story. Actually, I say we erase the story completely, because once the brain knows better, it wants to do better. We are not designed as stupid creatures. We're actually very, very smart with high intellects, all of us. And when you show the brain that there's a better, easier way to get what you want, then it feels like such of the burden or the pressure is off, because you've been trying potentially all these other ways, these diet plans, these pills, these meal plans, signing up for this, doing this shake. And some of that may be helpful. Some of that we may keep depending on if it's giving you some benefit or not. But really, like just eliminating these cultural, societal ways that we've been trained to think about food or alcohol, and just eliminate that. So then you can step into that newer version of you that just has less desire or no desire for it.
Mm. And so when did you decide to start the podcast? Was it right away when you started your business, or did that come as an evolution of your business, your coaching?
Yes. I thought about a podcast, but Marcy, I have to tell you, it was a hell no when I first started.
It's a lot of work. The finished product is so just a part of the whole thing.
Yeah. And the reason is because I was so afraid of rejection, because I felt my message was so going to startle the world and cause so many people to come back and say, where's your data? Where's this? How is this science? What? You're a pharmacist promoting this? So there was a ton of hesitation. But then as I got further into my business and I saw how much this was helping women and just really changing the trajectory, not of just their lives. Like I worked with some grandmas who couldn't see their grandkids because their daughters or their sons didn't trust their precious little ones in their home where they had access to alcohol. They just didn't trust that grandma wouldn't overdo it. And so I mended families through this one avenue. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think God just kept putting that fire in my belly, that fire in my belly, that fire in my belly. And then one day I just said, I have to start a podcast. I cannot ignore this anymore. It was like this little bit of anxiety in the pit of my stomach that just kept growing and growing and growing. And it's like, you've got to get people and you've got to reach more people with this message, because people need to hear this, and people are truly transforming not just their health and their lives, but generations down, right? And when her daughter saw her change her relationship with alcohol, she was like, oh my gosh, I want to start helping this woman spread the news of her podcast. And like other people were just seeing that it wasn't just a one size fits all model, because that grandmother had tried AA many times and just failed. And she was just so scared of failing again. And so I think once you hear these stories, once you see how many lives you're helping, the desire just kept coming and coming. And so I just broke through all those fears and just started it. And I thought, okay, it's up to God to see where this is going to go.
And how can we listen to your podcast? Where is it available?
everywhere: Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all the sources. I have a YouTube channel where we put it up on my YouTube channel as well. So anywhere you could get
And we
podcasts.
would search for Drink Less Lifestyle.
Drink Less Lifestyle.
Okay. And I have to say, I have seen firsthand the power of how a podcast reaches people, because in two separate occasions I saw people walk up to you well, not walk up to you, so at two separate occasions I know that you attracted people through your podcast first. One being at this event Brilliant we attended. There was a woman there who was like, oh my gosh, I listened to your podcast, and I was there for that conversation. I'm like, what the heck, that is so cool that little old Dr. Sherry Price making her podcast is reaching this big audience. And then a second time when I went to that event that you hosted at your house with Ana Nieto, who actually is a part of this group, Connected Women of Influence too. Shout out, side note. But so you hosted a one-day retreat with Ana, and one of your attendees came because she listened to your podcast. So I think it's so cool, because you might feel like in the podcasting world, it might feel like a one-way conversation, but it must be so rewarding when you actually find that people are out there listening and you don't know. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes. And it's funny. Sometimes I have some moms that reach out to me because they know I deal with a child who has some additional needs. And I'm pretty open and honest about how that parenting has gone terrible, and now how it's gone much better now that I'm able to utilize some tools and really mend our relationship to where it was. And then so they're like, wow, I want you to help me with parenting, or I want you to help my daughter with these issues, because it seems like you've gotten your daughter to work with her anxiety differently and not have it hold her back from trying out for flag football like she just did. And so a lot of people are reaching out, just not for the drinking piece, but parenting, or I want my daughter to be able to manage her anxiety. Can you just give her some tips and tools and work with her? So it's really seeing that this podcast, which was really supposed to be about drinking less, has become so much more and so much bigger, and helping so many people in different facets of their lives, which is so amazing.
Do you talk about your relationship with your daughter on your podcast?
I do. I talk about her early days of we discovering her having Tourette syndrome, and how I couldn't deal. I didn't know how to deal. I was so scared. I couldn't be that mom that stood up for her kid, because I would just cry when people would make fun of her. And I felt worse about myself, which would make me hit the Chardonnay bottle really hard at night. And that was a very painful time. Yeah. And I really didn't have coping skills. I didn't feel as a pharmacist I can talk to others openly about things, because, if I tell them I had a substance use disorder, there would go my pharmacy license. And if that ever hit my medical record or my medical chart, there's not going to be an employer who's going to hire me. So I think a lot of times people in healthcare and certain industries or certain high profile people cannot get the help that they need, because if that hits your mental health record, if that hits your medical record, that could be disastrous for your career. And AA says it's anonymous, but when you go to these meetings, they see your face, so it's not quite anonymous.
No, because it's in a group setting. Yes, and you're not behind a black screen.
Yes. And so a lot of people would just start crying with me, because they're like, wow, I didn't think help was available the way the system has help set up, and just the retribution I could have to my career, to my financial stability, if I was to be talking about this with somebody. And so nothing I do is documented in that way. There's no trail, because it was important to me that I provide that safety, that level of safety, for somebody to fully be able to express themselves so they can heal and transform.
And it's not easy to admit that you feel like you were making some wrong decisions as a mom. So I just want to applaud you for even talking about that, because I'm sure there's a lot that went into that. And I do want to, wrap up letting our listeners know, if this is intriguing to you and you really want to explore that in your own relationship with your children, I would highly encourage you to go to Dr. Sherry Price's website. What's your website?
EPICU, EPICYOU, EPICU.com.
Okay, because there are no, I know you put a lot of content on there, and it's nice to have the time and the space to visit this when you're in the headspace to do it, because it's heavy topic. But I think you just bring such a beautiful way of talking about it, and I know just from being around you, you're not judgmental. You're very curious, and you're very open to letting other people share, which I think is a beautiful combination. And maybe you are the perfect person to deliver this message at the time, which is why you were quote unquote chosen to deliver this message, right?
I feel that way for certain days. It's hard, and I'm like, really, but I just keep hearing from God. This is the path people need to hear. And if we don't embrace our struggles and we don't let people fully see us, we can't help as many people then. So I don't want to dim my light. I don't want to not be transparent, because I know when I am, and I may not ever get to meet them, but they can hear a story that will change how they think about something, or they can hear one of the tools that I use, and then it can help them manage their emotions or help with their parenting, so that we just set up all of society a little bit better and a little bit healthier.
Well, I'm all for that. So thank you so much for sharing, and I've really enjoyed just getting to know you as a person and getting to know your business. Thank you so much for being here on Women Lead TV. And if you, dear listener, are interested in connecting with a community of women who are doing great things in the world, I encourage you to check out Connected Women of Influence, and keep watching here on Women Lead TV. Thank you so much, Dr. Sherry Price, and we'll see you next time.
My pleasure.